First up is Miss Angela Heath. Angela is a nationally recognized gerontologist, author, and lecturer. She is the president of Heath and Company, a consulting firm outside of Washington, D.C. that provides speaking and training services, focus group research, materials development, and program design. Angela has a master's degree in gerontology from Miami University and has worked in the field of aging for over 20 years. Angela is a pioneer on caregiving issues, creating the first program kit for corporations, caregivers in the workplace. Her last book, Long Distance Caregivers, has been selected as one of the top aging books by the prestigious Library Journal. She is originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, and currently resides in Kensington, Maryland. Please give a warm welcome to Angela Heath.
Well, first of all, hello everybody. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. How many of you guys in the audience are actually caregivers now? A few. How many have had the opportunity to be a caregiver? Okay. Anybody have not been a caregiver yet? Okay. So most of us in this audience have had some experience with caregiving. So in terms of that conversation we need to have, there's two things I want you to remember. One is when is now, and the other thing is what is everything. So what I mean by that is when is now. We don't want to wait until our older relative has problems to begin having conversations, because when you do that, everybody's excitable. But when you start having some conversations early on, you can make good choices, not only for the older relative, but also for the caregiver. So I always advise people start as soon as you can. And these are difficult conversations, so you're not going to go over to grandma's house and say, Grandma, where do you want to go when you can't take care of yourself and you're falling down and you can't get up? We want to approach this very sensitively. So one thing you can do is, as a family, as a community, begin to think about what do you want your future to look like? How can you envision your future? There's a program at AARP called Living Longer, Living Smarter. And we have 3 parts of that. Envisioning your future, we have people actually pause. Think about what do you want 10, 20, 30 years from today. Develop a plan to help you get there, and then share that plan with the people who need to know. So that's something that you need to be doing with your older relatives, and that's something that you need to be doing for yourself. So what are you going to think about? Your whole life, pretty much. We call it ADLs professionally, activities of daily living. So these are things that you have to do to take care of your body. So it's eating, dressing, bathing, those kinds of things. You also have to think about what we call IADLs. And those are instrumental activities of daily living that you do to take care of a household. So it's the cleaning, the cooking, the transportation, and those kind of things. So if you think about what you would do on a typical 24-hour day, that's everything from getting out of the bed until you go to bed at night. You need to consider all of those things. And if there ever comes a time when your older relative can no longer do those things unassisted, what would they prefer? And then what would you prefer for yourself?
So Angela, what are some of the hot button words that you should use and not use when you're having those sensitive conversations?
Well, nobody wants to hear about what they should do, right? Nobody wants to hear about what they can't do, right? So when we are approaching an older relative or friend, we want to just be very careful that we're very respectful. And even though a person is older, does not mean that they don't understand. It does not mean that they don't want to stay in control of their lives. So the way we sort of phrase things is really important. How many of you have been caregivers and got some pushback from the older relatives? Anybody experienced that? Yes, quite common. And some people say, well, they don't want to do what's best. But I always say that people want to maintain their independence above all else. So if we're suggesting anything that suggests to them that they can't, they shouldn't, they won't, then they're going to be resistant. But when we sort of approach things in a way where we're saying, let's think about how can we make sure you can stay where you want to stay for as long as possible and bring whatever kind of help available to you, people are a little less resistant to that.
So Angela, when you're trying to have these hard conversations and also doing the planning stage, sometimes you find that your relative don't provide you with all of the information, or they will tell one person one thing and tell another person another. So what are your advice for pulling it all together so that you can get all of the information accurate and correct that you may need?
Okay. Well, one thing I recommend is that you have a family meeting and have a neutral third party to sort of moderate it. Because when you start talking about family dynamics, now none of you, because all you guys have great family relationships, you don't have those crazy Uncle Boo-Boos in your family. But in those other families, they do. And so if you don't have a neutral party to really kind of manage that process, it can break down. But when you do a family meeting, you have to make some agreements that the older person is going to be present. Don't ever make decisions if that person is competent for an older person without them present at that family meeting. You're only going to talk about the issues at hand. You're not going back 20 years when so-and-so didn't help with whatever they didn't help with. You know, you want to make sure that everybody has the same shared goal. And that is to maintain the older loved one's independence for as long as possible. You can also make sure that the younger people are engaged. They don't have to make the decision, but they can help. Younger people benefit from older people, and so they should be able to help older people. But I want to end that question with a story from my own family. This is a true story. My mother, one night, just got incoherent. She lives in Ohio. And they rushed her to the hospital and found out she had a brain tumor. So she was going to have an operation in a couple days. The social worker, discharge planner at the hospital is supposed to do the advance directives that you talked about, but she did not. So I fly, and I get there, and there's no advance directives in place. So I say, we're doing advance directives. 4 of us, kids. My dad's still living, but we done took over. My oldest sister was having a medical condition, so she was on some kind of drugs, and she was drowsy all the time. She clocked out. My older sister got angry at me. Why are you saying that? I've had 2 operations. I never had to sign papers like this before. We're still doing it. My brother, who's younger than me, and the baby, and the mom's favorite, Mom, don't worry about it. I'll never unplug you from anything. But I say we're still doing it. So we have our family meeting, and everybody's mad at me, but I don't care because I'm taking care of my mom. And so when we get down to the bottom where it's time for her to sign, and we were going to get the nurses as the witnesses, she says, I'm tired. I don't want to go through this right now. So we stopped, and she said, you all going to get something to eat. In fact, this is my last meal. I want to get a hamburger. You know, she ordered up all her stuff. So we all going out to get the food. And she said, Angie, you stay here. I need to talk to you about something. She said, don't tell them. Put you down as the person because they're not going to do what I want. But I was so proud of her. And your family members will be so proud of you if you take that control of your own life and make your own decisions so that Like, I love what you said when you said that if you don't make your decisions, the state has already made a plan for you. I had never heard it put that way, but that's absolutely correct. And we don't ever want the state to have control over our decisions.